Hello everyone! Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking all about trees and how you can make your Minecraft world look so much more amazing by building your own custom trees in your world. Let's get started. So I've picked out this lovely little spot on a hill right here and we are going to build a custom tree. I'm not going to do this in time lapse, it's going to be block by block with no commands, so you can do this on any version of Minecraft that you are in. I'm going to be starting by building the trunk of the tree out of a gold block. I'm doing that because the gold block is just a little bit easier to see with the harsh edges on it, so hopefully you'll be able to follow along a little bit easier. I do want you to remember as I'm doing this that although I am showing you block for block what I'm doing, trees are very organic things. They don't need to be perfect, so don't try and just copy me block for block. You can do things a little bit differently than how I'm doing it and still get a fantastic tree. Don't stress yourself out over it too much. Now let's start building. So to start with this tree, I'm going to be beginning a trunk. This is going to be a fairly small oak tree, so I'm going to start with a 2x2 base and then kind of slowly build it up from there. This is the rough thickness of a tree that I'm going to be okay with. From here I can add a couple of little roots and I'll kind of go back in afterwards and add in a few more if I decide I need those. I don't tend to go for too many roots around my area because I like it to be more focused on the trunk and the branches, not too thick on the base. Now let's just continue going up. Right here, I'm going to start splitting off the trunk a little bit and just kind of bringing it up in random directions, kind of all over the place. One thing that I'm trying to do here is really bring everything in a lot of different directions. So we've got some branches that are going to be leaning very far upwards and some that are going to be leaning downwards. We want these to be going in as many directions as possible. The hardest part of these trees for me is the leaves. But if you can really nail a good branch shape that is nice and circular and all over the place, you'll end up getting good leaf coverage fairly easily. So that's what I'm really focused on doing here now. Just going to keep dragging around different branches and kind of looking at it from all angles as I'm going along. I'm not thinking too much about this, honestly. There's not a whole lot of good commentary and tips that I can give you. Just build sort of randomly and organically. Let yourself do whatever you think is going to be right for this tree. I'm going to stick another branch out right here and have this one kind of going upwards and then leaning down on the ends. We'll maybe take another branch going off of this, up right here. There we go, that's looking good. Now let's do a little fly around on this tree and see how we feel. So it's coming out a lot this way, and there's not a lot happening right in this area here or on the lower area. So I think I would actually like to fix that. Let's do that by maybe just building up a little branch right here. I'm gonna keep going on a diagonal, kind of coming up like that, and we'll get some branches going in all of the different directions. This is my personal favorite way to build a tree. I think you get such lovely shapes and full coverage, but I will show a couple of different techniques in this video. This looks a lot better and a lot fuller now, although I think this is maybe like one block too tall for the tree. That's better. Let's do another circle and make sure. I think right here could use another little branch perhaps. Yes, that's good. Okay, I think I am happy with this shape. Hopefully you guys can follow along with what I was doing here because of the gold blocks, but now I'm going to use some world edit to just replace these into the normal wood block so that it does look like a tree. Obviously, if you are following this, you were using the full log blocks if you have those available to you. There we go, that looks so much better now. Now let's pick out our leaf blocks. For me, I'm going to be going with some oak leaves on this, and I'm also going to be doing some smaller branches out of the spruce fence. I'm picking spruce to go with the oak just because the color matches very closely compared to the oak fence, which just is a little bit too bright for me. But if you prefer the oak, just go for whatever color it works for you. I'm going to be adding just a few branches around here to the ends. Just because this is a smaller tree, it's kind of difficult to get those small little twig branches that you want sometimes. So adding these can be very, very helpful. There we go. Now we've got lots of these fences all over the place. Now it's time for the tricky part, the leaves. So this is definitely not an exact science. The main thing is that you want to have things very, very spaced out. And there's a few methods you could use for this. If you're in survival mode, what I would recommend is just kind of literally just do this, just like spam place them. And then in survival mode, build up a lot of scaffolding and get your shears and just break all through them. You can kind of have quite a lot of fun with it. Just go through and break all of the leaves and you'll collect them back. And then you'll have all of these lovely air blocks throughout the entire thing. And that's what you want. You want it to look like some birds could fly through here. Nice and spacious. You want to still be able to see those branches as you're wandering underneath the tree. You want the sun rays to be able to come through. Just generally doing a lot of this, basically. Placing, breaking, figuring out how to make things look as bushy as humanly possible. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. Now we just have to do that to all of the branches, and this is the part that I am going to time-lapse, because you really don't have to place these leaves exactly as I'm placing them. Just make sure you have lots of air blocks, and you'll be totally fine. Okay, now that those leaves are done, this is looking a lot better, but we still have a little bit more work to do. As you can see, there are still some blank spots, even though I went over the entire thing with leaves. So now what I'm going to do is just try to fluff it up a little bit by adding in lots of these extra leaves in places where it's missing, like right here. I want it to be sort of a round canopy without looking too mushroom-like. So I'm leaving lots and lots of gaps, but I am being careful not to do any floating leaves. Like for example, that leaf right here now is completely floating, and although it looks okay, you can definitely tell that it is. So even if I'm not perfectly connecting to a branch, I try to have no floating leaves. I try to build it up just enough that everybody kind of has a friend in here. Somebody that's right next to them, keeping them connected to the tree. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense. And again, I am looking at the tree from all angles. This angle to me looks pretty good. It's the other angle that we were just looking at that I'm a little worried about. This one we could use a little bit more right here, and right there we've got a really big sky gap. So I've got a little bit of work to do. I'm gonna go ahead and fill these in now because I don't think you need a tutorial on how to slowly place leaves one by one. The other thing I want to mention just before we finish this leaf section is to make sure that you are building up underneath the branches. You don't want to see too much of this wood, right? You want everything to be evenly coated in leaves, especially in this type of tree that we're going for, which is an oak tree. If you need some inspiration, I definitely recommend looking at pictures of trees online because there are so many amazing shapes of trunks and different leaf patterns that you can get, and it's so inspiring. It's such a good idea to look at that if you're ever lacking inspiration for trees. That should be in your area. Okay, this is looking much better now. The only other things I would do for a tree like this is maybe just add a little bit of texturing, so you can add blocks that are very similar in color, like these here, and we can just do a little bit of texture throughout them just to vary the tree a little bit and make it a little bit more interesting. You can do that especially if you want your tree to look a little bit older or more aged. You can use soul sand or maybe some different green blocks throughout. Placing some grass, some sea pickles are a great option because they kind of just sit so nicely on the tree. I love being able to do things like this, and I think it really, really helps out the whole entire build. You can leave some grass all around the tree. And then I'm also going to add some coarse dirt under the tree just to make it look like it's a bit of a shady area, so maybe some of the grass has died off. And there we have it, tree 1 is complete. Okay, next on the list of trees we're going to build is a birch tree. Let's get started. The birch tree for me is one of my absolute favorite trees. We have a lot of them where I live and they are fairly simple to build. All I'm going to do is build a straight line right the way up, as high as I want. I'm actually gonna go a little bit shorter. That's a little bit too much. Then I'm just gonna thicken up the base a little bit with maybe a few roots. And now, all I'm going to do is build a whole bunch of branches off of this. If you want, you can even curve this tall trunk just a little bit. I personally don't like doing that because most of the birch trees that I see are pretty straight, but they can grow a little bit quirky sometimes. So if you want to do that, you totally can. all I'm going to be doing now from the center branch is building up these other branches coming off of this. The bottom ones are going to be a little bit longer than ones off of that, and remember to still make sure that you're going both up and down and having lots and lots of variation throughout your entire tree. And get all of the sides, not just ones opposite each other. I think birchwood in Minecraft is something that is so underrated. So many people don't use it because it is a little bit harsh to use. It's got white and black in the same block. It's a pretty hard contrast, but I think that birch trees are so beautiful and honestly very underappreciated. All right, let's take a little look at our shape so far. So that's perfect. That's pretty much what I want. So we're still going to have a pretty round shape, but it's going to be a little bit more tall. I am going to extend my top just a little bit so I have more room to have more fun with these branches. And right at the top, I'm just going to be curving that just a little tiny bit, getting as many branches in as possible. And I think I am happy with this shape. What do we think? Let's do just a quick 360. I think this side is maybe lacking a little bit just because I made those like so opposite each other. So I'll just add another branch right there. That's a lot better. Yes, so the important thing, again, get your branches right because your leaves will be so much easier to place if you've got lots of branches to attach them to. I really like this, so I think we can change this out to wood and start on the leaves. Alright, here's our birch wood, and I've got my birch leaves in my inventory. For this one, I'm not going to be doing any fences. I'm just going to be going straight in and adding these birch leaves. Nice and sparse at first, and we'll go in and thicken after. Again, you can use the method of going in very thick at first, but I kind of like when I'm in creative mode and flying around, having the control over exactly where I'm placing everything. Once I have all of the ones in close to the branch, then I can come in and kind of fluff that up a little bit and add lots of ones all around that are kind of a little floating away from the branch. You kind of get the illusion that there might be twigs out here that you can't see. And I really like that effect, so I'm gonna go ahead now and try to get these leaves all in place. Alright, I think I'm feeling very good about these leaves on this tree. You'll notice they are a little bit more sparse than the other one, but I think it allows the nice, beautiful contrasting color of the trunk to shine through so well. I would love to see an entire birch forest made out of different variations of this tree. So fun! Okay everyone, for my final tree in this tutorial, I want to showcase that texturing method that I mentioned in the first tree. We, for this, are going to be building a old willow tree. These are one of my favorite trees to build, and I think they can add so much to a Minecraft world. We're going to start off right here with the trunk as usual, going with about the same size as that first tree we did with the 2x2, but I'm going to build it up just a little bit further and also do some more dramatic roots. We can just make this look a little bit more mystical, like this would fit into a fantasy world really well. Something like that. Now we're going to kind of slowly bring this up and kind of taper it off, and also I think I'm going to lean it this way just a little bit. Yeah, something like this, kind of adjust the trunk as we're going up. That'll work. Now, the main thing with a willow is there's going to be a lot of leaves and not so much on the top part. They're going to be dragging down over the base. So I want the branches on this tree to look very much like they are being dragged down by all the weight. I'm going to kind of go up at first, but then bring them down slowly so that we get that very classic willow tree shape. I'm going to kind of continue with this, bringing this over, and then this will probably be our tallest branch right here, and we'll just also drag this one down. So it's gonna look a little bit odd at first. We're gonna have a lot of these shapes and not near as much bushiness and variation as we had in the other two trees, but you're gonna have to trust me. I think this is gonna work. Let's just do that again, more and more branches, and we can still add a little bit of variety, like I can shift this one over a little bit, and maybe just have the end kind of shift back that way so we get a little bit more shape to it. And we can go on a diagonal. That will definitely add a good variation. There we go. Yeah, that's a cool little shape. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep going and repeating this same method all around this tree. Remember, you can do branches however you want. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. I am, however, gonna add a few that are kind of going haywire in different directions because I still want it to be easy to place the leaves all over the place. Let's give a little bit of love to this back side over here so that we can get really good full coverage all along this tree. I do think this top branch is maybe just like a little too big, so I'm gonna bring that all back just a little tiny bit right there, and then let's add some more branches across here. Why not? Some that are kind of growing so they're a little bit more upwards. We can do another one right here. Oh, this is just so much fun to do. I'm going to continue with that and then we can start on the leaves. Okay, I think I am happy with this tree here. I do think this is one that's going to need a little bit more adjusting as we go, just because the leaves on this are going to be such a challenge. But for now, let's get started with this, shall we? I'm going with the very dark spruce wood for this particular tree, and then I'm going to be going with the jungle leaves just to make things look a little bit more full. And the first thing I'm going to do is line all of these branches with leaves. So we're not going to be fluffing this tree up like we did with the other ones a whole lot. Everything is really dragged down and focused on the bottom part of the tree. But I do still want the tops of the branches to be pretty much covered. So I'm going to give them a little layer of coverage over on the top. Not just completely covering everything, but adding a few gaps and places of interest in some areas just to give a little variety, I guess. Okay, now that all of our branches have a nice healthy coating of leaves, we can start worrying about the actual willow portion of this. We are building in vanilla Minecraft, so for this particular tree, I'm not going to be using any entities to drag down. We will, however, be using some vines and some fences to our advantage here. But let's first start by seeing just how these leaves are going to look. I don't want to just drag them down straight. That would be kind of boring, and I think it would fill things in just a little bit too much for my liking. I still want to have lots of variety and air blocks throughout this whole tree and not make it look too full. This, in general, is the effect that I'm going for. It's still dragging down, but it's not too full, and you could still have birds flying through this tree. Now let's grab some of our other blocks, like the dark oak fence is one that I'm going to be using, and the vine, of course. With these, I'm just going to be coming to the ends of some of these branches and adding a few areas where the actual kind of stick part of these branches is also dragged down. And then around that, all I'm going to do is continue with these leaves, placing them all around all of these areas. Again, lots of air blocks throughout them, but not as many air blocks as we were doing before. And I'm also not doing these all on the same level. So if I'm out here, then I go back one, and then I can come kind of here and then out one again, just to give a good amount of shape and variety to this tree. I think this is definitely going to help as I go around and do all of the branches. Now, once that is done, I'm going to go in with a few vines. Because the ticks are on this world, these vines will eventually grow and give a lovely full effect. I'm going to be putting them on the inside of the branches as well. And once these grow, we will go around and trim them and stop them from overgrowing and taking over the entire tree. But for now, we just have to wait. Let's go ahead and do the rest of these branches now. Again, for all of these branches, we're going with that same shape that we did first, making sure to make them look like they're very dragged down, but can still flow and have a very organic and natural shape. That's going to be super important with this tree, and I want to stay consistent with it on every single branch. Okay, I feel great about this leaf placement. Now I just have to sort of wait for these vines to grow. That's going to take a little while, so while that is happening, I think we will go ahead and make this tree look a little bit more aged and a little bit more special by helping out the area around it. I'm going to be grabbing my Corster and Podzol, and then some other blocks that can kind of go in the trunk. The first one I want to grab for sure is the soul sand, and once I have that, I think I'm also going to throw in maybe some planks. And maybe let's get our colors together and kind of decide this right now. So we've got a lot of blocks that we can work with that aren't currently in the palette. So let's just put these out next to it. I loved the look of Soul Sand. That is for sure a winner. And we've got all of these other variants. The way that I usually decide this is which way I want to go with the tree. Do I want to go towards more of a grayish tone with kind of these, and the Soul Sand with that definitely matches it? Or do I want to go with more of a reddish tone, which is where I would go if I was going in this direction? For this tree in particular, I think I would like to go more towards the grays, but also a little bit of red. So I think that's what I'm going to decide on in the end. This is a smaller tree, so I'm not going with too many of these texture blocks. I think even 3 is quite a lot, and I'm going to try not to go too overboard with this. I'm focusing mostly on the bottom, and these blocks here, the Soul Sand, is the lightest block that I'm using. It has these very, very light brown pixels in it. So I'm going to be using those more towards the tops of these blocks. And then in the darker areas, I'm going to be using my darker blocks, like these planks. I'm going to be able to put on the underside of these branches. Just add some nice texturing and shading to this tree. Even though it is a smaller tree, I still think this adds a very nice effect. Let's get that all throughout. And then we can kind of smooth things out in a couple of areas with this terracotta. There we go. I'm fairly happy with that. So now what I'm going to do is go along on the ground and add a little bit more variation to the ground as well. Oops, didn't mean to break that. There we go. I'm going to be putting Podzol in right next to the tree and then kind of working in a gradient out from that, adding a little bit of coarse dirt. So let me just kind of vary this a little bit in a couple of areas. There we are, and then we'll get our coarse dirt. There, that looks so much better already. Now what we can do is add some simple pops of color with maybe some rose bushes, some ferns to bring back some of that lovely green color that we had going. And I think I might actually go ahead and just grab some carpet right here and see if I can add sort of like a mossy effect to a few areas on this tree. Just like so. And then that'll make a little bit more sense once we get some ferns around. Things looking a little bit more green. All right, this willow tree is almost complete, but as you can see, all of those vines that I've placed have kind of taken over the entire tree. I'm going to be using the good old string trick to kind of limit some of these, stop them from touching the ground completely, and just give generally a better variety. Although I do kind of enjoy how they are kind of going everywhere right now. But this in general should keep everything under control and stop it from looking too crazy and too much like a jungle, which I really, really don't want. The other option that you can do if you don't want your vines to overgrow is actually use the game rule. So if you do game rule random tick speed, you can set that to 0 and that'll make it so nothing grows. Of course, if you're in survival mode, that's not really much of an option, which is why I think the string is generally just a good idea. Trees in Minecraft are so important to a build. A custom tree can make or break a build, and having a forest surrounding a kingdom is so important to the entire atmosphere. It makes everything better. However, real-life trees are even more important, and we really need to be protecting our forests in real life. That is why this video is supporting Team Trees, a project by Mr. Beast who wants to plant 20 million trees by 2020. I'm going to be leaving the link to help him out and donate down in the description. I will also be donating to this cause and helping to plant a forest of my own in real life. Thank you for understanding, and I hope you got something out of this tutorial. Goodbye, everyone!